In Panama, polling stations closed without setbacks in this election day and the counting of votes began. Palestinian citizens began to return to their homes in the southwestern Gaza Strip town of Khan Yunis following the withdrawal of Israeli troops. And the summit of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation adopted on its last day a resolution in Gaza called in support of the Palestinian cause. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Panama, vote counting is advancing as part of the general elections where citizens will choose more than 800 positions, including president and vice president. With 40% of the votes counted, the candidate José Raúl Molino leads with over 30% of the votes, followed by candidate of the Otro Camino movement, Ricardo Lobana, with around 24%. More than 3 million Panamanians were able to exercise their right to vote in more than 3,000 voting centers. Panamanians went to the polls to elect 81 district mayors, 701 township representatives, 11 councillors, 71 legislators to the National Assembly, and 20 to the Central American Parliament, all with their respective substitutes. According to the electoral law, the positions are defined by simple majority without a second round. The former magistrate of the Electoral Tribunal, Guillermo Márquez Amado, highlighted the work of the citizens in the general elections of this Sunday, May 5th.
Have spoken and expressed themselves through the vote. It is a day to celebrate. We have been able to act with responsibility and democratic commitment. We have honored our history created by many Panamanians since 1903 when our Independence Act was signed. They gave us a legacy to preserve, an independent, democratic and responsible republic, for the happiness of all. Today, with our vote, we have successfully endorsed that legacy. Thousands of Panamanians have freely decided on the future of our country. We have done it in peace, with passion and commitment.
Likewise, the former magistrate of the electoral entity thanked the polling station members and other officials for their enthusiastic participation in the elections and informed that the second phase of the vote counting has already started.
From the House of Democracy, I thank the enthusiastic participation of Panamanians who patiently and with dedication went to vote. My deepest gratitude for your commitment to these democratic elections. I thank the table members for their participation. I acknowledge the civic behavior of the candidates and political parties to bring this election day to a successful conclusion. Panamanians, at this moment we are initiating another phase of our electoral process. The members of the voting tables are beginning the counting of the votes. The unofficial transmission program of electoral results known as TR will begin to work around 4:30 in the afternoon as the information is received.
Finally, former Electoral Tribunal Magistrate Guillermo Márquez Amado urged respect for the electoral results.
I call on everyone to patiently, prudently, and responsibly accept the results of these elections. This is the essence of democracy. In these elections, there will be no losers. We will all win by building a new political stability. With peace, order, and with much democratic enthusiasm, we make the homeland with you.
In this context, presidential candidate Ricardo Lobana urged citizens to supervise the process. To that effect, he posted the following comment on his X account. By law in Panama, all vote counting is made in public. Go to your school to supervise the scrutiny and take care of every single vote. If we take care of the votes, we take care of democracy. Panama depends on us. For his part, candidate Romulo Roques thanks Panamanians for exercising their right to vote and urged citizens to remain attentive throughout this election day. On his X account, he wrote that voting centers closed an hour ago. He thanked the Panamanians who went to the vote and decided the direction of the country should take. Then he added that the battle for the future of Panama does not end there and that they have to continue taking care of the votes. The candidate also made reference to the fact that they are counting on the captains and observers to defend the freedom of Panamanians. Finally, Romulo Roques affirmed that they are not letting their guard down. They maintain their hope and are giving their all because the change is coming. In the midst of a rampant frustration for the performance of the traditional political parties, 8 candidates aspire to replace the worn-out administration of Laurentino Cortizo. For several analysts, the new governors will have to face a weakened economy that drags almost $50 billion of public debt, draft a new constitution, a bankrupt social security fund, the water crisis, and the role of the canal. Also, informality in the labor market, high cost of living, growing irregular migration, corruption cases pending in the justice system, and the consequences of the end of metallic mining, demanded by the people in the streets in protest that shook the country in 2023, among other challenges. Earlier in the day, in declarations for our multimedia teleSUR, Saul Mendes, member of the Single National Union of Workers in the Construction and Similar Industries, denounced that some of the presidential candidates promote a neoliberal policy.
These candidates, in addition to having applied the neoliberal economic policy of hunger and misery, have made Panama the 4th place in the world with the worst distribution of wealth, have used force, repression, and the murder of the Panamanian people to impose reforms, as was the case at the time. The Minister of Public Security who headed this repression was the one who today is the candidate of the United RM Party. In addition to a massacre that took place in Colón for the War of the Free Zones in the area of Chiriquí and the Comarcas. And we are seeing here neoliberalism, the poor fire of the political, economic, social system that exists in Panama.
Also, in an interview for teleSUR, the Deputy National Coordinator of Fernadeso, Rolando Ortiz, recalled that the Panamanian people are always ready and alert to defend their rights and stop any project that does not represent the good of the country.
When I was there last year at the end of 2023, the youth of the countryside, the working class of all sectors, came out against a mining project that we knew did not represent good for the country. When you have a high level of informality, economic indicators, inequality, an institutional crisis where corruption becomes something natural, and you see the youth, they do not have the space they deserve and figure as a millstone, and the other candidates of the right, who do not want to accept it, will continue in the same way and will get worse, and the people will return to the streets to defend their rights.
Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has pledged federal support for flood victims and reconstruction work in Rio Grande do Sul. On Sunday, President Lula, along with his ministers, flew over the affected areas to define resources and any extraordinary measures to help in the recovery. President Lula said the federal government will implement an interministerial strategy to provide assistance, and he said branches of government dealing with social and environmental issues will put together a plan to recover jobs, ensure the return to school, and to prevent new climate disasters. President Lula also said immediate humanitarian aid will be distributed to all floods victims in Rio Grande do Sul. In this regard, the Brazilian president posted the following on his X account: "I am a man who truly believes in God, so I made my team of ministers available for this trip. I also called representatives of the other branches of power. It was necessary to see things up close, as we are doing here, to understand the magnitude of what's happened, and to help the people of the southern region." The death toll by the storms in Rio Grande do Sul state amounted to 72. The Brazilian Civil Defense reported 103 missing and 150 injured so far. Authorities unfolded that nearly 80,000 people had to evacuate, of whom 15,000 found refuge in government-organized shelters in sports centers, and others went to their relatives or friend homes. The entity refers that 7 regions were most affected by the weather phenomenon, with road closures and damage to several infrastructures. Furthermore, over 400,000 dwellings are in blackouts, mostly in flooded areas. Kenya said Sunday that the death toll from weeks of devastating rains and floods had risen to 228 and warned that there was no sign of a let-up in the crisis. In the western region, the river Nando burst its banks in the early hours of Sunday, engulfing a police station, school, hospital and market in the town of Ahero. Weeks of heavier than usual seasonal rains, compounded by the El Niño weather pattern, have wreaked chaos in many parts of East Africa, a region highly vulnerable to climate change. More than 400 people have been killed and several 100,000 uprooted from their homes in several countries as floods and mudslides swamp houses, roads and bridges.
My name is Mary Enyango Owor. My late husband is now 2 months old in the grave, and the grave has been dug out by the first rains. As of now, I don't even know if his coffin is now floating on top of the flood waters. I moved from my house at 11 o'clock in the night when the flood water came. When I got out of the house, the walls of my house had already cracked, and so I just left everything behind.
Possibly this night, we don't know how we are going to do. We are going to sleep in the cold. All our belongings were swept with the flood, and we don't have anyone. These are our animals. We are just going to put them here till we shall come for rescue, anyone who will help.
In Egypt, peace negotiations between Hamas and Israel wrapped up without any progress on an end to the conflict in Gaza. On Sunday, the Hamas delegation announced it was leaving Cairo after 2 days of negotiations and after submitting a response to the proposal presented by Cairo to the mediators, Egypt and Qatar. Hamas representatives said it has been 2 days of serious and deep discussions with the mediators and reiterated its determination to reach an agreement that will bring an end to the Israeli aggression on Gaza. Reportedly, the Hamas delegation left for Doha, the capital of Qatar, for official talks before returning to Egypt on Tuesday to complete negotiations. The Israeli government stated that it is willing to agree to a temporary ceasefire, but that it will not stop its offensive in the Gaza Strip. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel will not accept Hamas proposals and will continue with its aggressions until it achieves all its objectives. Israeli forces also plan to enter the city of Rafah regardless of the outcome of the hostages negotiations under the pretext of destroying Hamas battalions. Meanwhile, Hamas reiterated its call for a permanent ceasefire and the withdrawal of Israeli troops from Palestinian territory. Palestinian citizens began to return to their homes in the southwestern Gaza Strip town of Khan Yunis following the withdrawal of Israeli troops. Despite the destruction caused by Israel, Palestinian citizens gradually regained control of Khan Yunis. Some of them still have to live in tents in front of the remains of their former homes. However, they started to work on identifying the damage caused by the structures to try to restore them. In addition, they reactivated markets and school activities in this southern Gaza town in the hope of resuming their lives. Experts say that the Palestinian resistance movement Hamas gradually regained control of the Gaza Strip after Israel concentrated its military forces on the surrounding and attacked the southern Gaza town of Rafah. In Israel, thousands of citizens demonstrated in Tel Aviv to demand early elections and new agreements with Palestine to achieve the release of the Israeli held in the Gaza Strip. Activists and relatives of those held by the Hamas group in Gaza protested against Benjamin Netanyahu's government and demanded his resignation. Police blocked streets to contain the demonstration, as well as nearby highway exits to prevent protesters from blocking traffic. The protest was organized by Generation of Change, a movement founded after the Palestinian uprising last October 7th.
I think the ceasefire is adamant that the most important thing is to bring back the hostages and bring humanitarian aid to Gaza. That is the most important thing, and a ceasefire will do that. Basically, the Israeli people are being held hostage by the right-wing government.
In France, hundreds of pro-Palestine demonstrators marched Sunday in Paris, demanding justice for the Palestinian people and an end to the genocidal Israeli aggression on the Gaza Strip. Participants gathered in the first district of Paris, calling for an immediate halt to the Israeli aggression on Gaza. Demonstrators also demanded the exclusion of Israeli athletes from participating in the upcoming Paris Olympic Games. On Saturday, many cities and capitals worldwide, including Berlin, London and Dublin and Ottawa, saw massive protests in support of the Palestinian people, urging an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and the delivery of humanitarian aid. We have a final short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Chinese President Xi Jinping arrived on Sunday in Paris, the capital of France, which is the first stop of his tour of 3 European countries. According to the French newspapers Le Figaro, the Chinese leader will meet with his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron on the 60th anniversary of the diplomatic relations between the two countries. The French and Chinese leaders plan to discuss the international agenda as well as economic and political issues of bilateral relations. In addition, the head of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, will join the talks between the two leaders on Monday to discuss trade disputes between China and Europe. The Russian Interior Ministry has issued a search warrant for Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. The order against the Ukrainian president is based on an article of the Russian Criminal Code, which is not specified. Also, another search warrant was issued against former Ukrainian President Pyotr Poroshenko. The Russian Interior Ministry included in the list of wanted persons the commander of the ground forces of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Alexander Pavulko. Also on the list appeared former acting Minister of Defense and current rector of the National Defense University of Ukraine, Mikhail Koval. Russian President Vladimir Putin attended the Easter Mass celebrated by the Orthodox Church. The head of state joined the Orthodox worshippers and Moscow Major Sergei Sobyanin at the Cathedral of Christ the Savior in Moscow on Saturday night. The service was led by the head of the Russian Orthodox Church, Patriarch Kirill, who prayed for the protection of Russia's sacred frontiers. Most of Western Christian churches observe Easter this year on March 31st, while the Eastern Orthodox churches follow the older Julian calendar and celebrated on May 5th. Health authorities in Italy report an increase of 618 confirmed cases of COVID-19 and 9 deaths as from April 2024. According to the country's Institute of Health, 155,090 remain positive to the disease, of which 154,500 are isolated in their homes and more than 500 people are in hospitals. The institute also indicated that during the same period, 76,553 COVID tests were carried out with a positivity rate of 0.8%. In 2020, more than 190,000 COVID-related deaths were reported in Italy. On Sunday, the summit of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC, adopts on its last day a resolution on Gaza called in support of the Palestinian cause. According to the OIC Secretary, the summit adopted a resolution on the cause of Palestine and Al-Quds al-Sharif. It also offered a final declaration on the issue on its agenda in the political, humanitarian, legal, economic, cultural, social and media fields, in addition to the Banjul Declaration. In his opening speech, Secretary General Hussein Brahim Taha condemned the Israeli attacks on Gaza and reaffirmed the OIC support and commitment to the Palestinian cause.
The principled position of the Islamic Cooperation Organization is to support the Palestinian people and their fair cause. It calls for the immediate halt of the Israeli aggression against the Gaza Strip, to facilitate adequate and sustained access of aid to Gaza, and to continue the Islamic mobilization in support of the right of Palestine to apply for full membership in the United Nations and the establishment of the State of Palestine, with Al-Quds Sharif as its capital.
At the summit, the President of Gambia delivered a very clear message about how his country has been very consistent regarding the Palestinian cause and has done its utmost to mobilize the organization with one voice to make Palestine free.
I think our message is very, very clear. We have always been very, very consistent when it comes to the Palestinian issue. If you have been following the Gambia since I came to power, there is no statement that we have delivered at the UNGA without mentioning Palestinian. So we have been following Palestinians keenly, and we support them, and we will do everything possible to mobilize the organization so that we will speak with one voice to make sure Palestinian is free, not even ceasefire, but a permanent ceasefire, and at the same time we deliver the project of the Palestinian people to their independence. That's what we are working.
We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.